Please do remember that TIFU stories are often more adult in nature than regular videos. Enjoy the video. 1. I guess the best way to describe my FU is to begin with my family's sudden departure from our hometown in Bolivia. We were from a pretty small farming town, but my father was able to put himself through school and work with computers at a prestigious company in a nearby city. My brother and I had a pretty humble upbringing for most of our childhood. We had our food and shelter, and very basic education going for us. But it was no secret that money was scarce. The reason I bring up our money situation is because, up until my adolescence, I didn't speak a word of English, which is more common in poorer areas of Latin America. I come home from school one day, and my parents asked my brother and I to sit down. They announced proudly that my dad had been offered a job up in Canada, and they were extremely excited for our family to move up there within the upcoming year. Excited. Although even at 12 years old I knew that it would be a better life for us, I was not amused at the thought of having to start over. I guess as a kid I just liked the comfort of our small town, and the neighbours, and the familiarity of the area. I expressed disappointment. My brother, who has always been the opposite of me, shared the excitement and thrill with my parents. He spoke of wanting to learn English and meet the pretty American girls. For some reason we both thought that Canada was part of the United States. My brother Diego and I were always different in ways that made me feel ignored, or I guess inferior. He was outgoing and so easy to talk to. Although he was younger than myself, I felt as if he was always outdoing me intentionally, like he looked down on me. It was no surprise to me that by the time we made the move to Canada, his English was decent enough to hold up a conversation. My dad had enrolled us in English classes, and although I attended, I didn't make any effort and refused to do the homework for it. Both of my parents had actually suggested that we focus more on our English classes than on school itself because we would need the English for school in Canada. My first semester at the local high school was worse than I had expected, and the only person to blame was myself. The whole move had been really hard on me, and no matter how friendly every single person was to me, I found myself struggling to make any friends. So many people reached out to me, often gesturing a friendship. People often waved me over to their lunch table to try to get me to open up, but I was too shy and introverted, and to be honest, kind of a dick. By the time the first semester was done, I had learned some English, and the only reason I was able to pass any of my classes was out of pity from the teachers. Diego, on the other hand, was slaying it. His English was probably not perfect, but it was good enough to get him B's on his report card, which my parents were more than ecstatic about. This contrast between my brother and I was what probably led to the FU in the first place. I think my parents would not have been on my ass at all if my brother wasn't doing so much better. They could have chalked up my self-isolation to the hardships of a teen being taken away from his familiar surroundings or some bullshit like that. But unfortunately, they had an intervention with me, which included meeting with both my parents and the guidance counselor. They were worried that I may be depressed, and one of the suggestions was that I sign up for an extracurricular activity, something that would force me to socialize and work as a team with people. I wasn't forced, to be honest, but watching my mom tear up next to my dad really opened my eyes to the kind of sacrifice they were making. So in a way, I guess parental guilt was what ultimately forced me to join the school's production of The Jungle Book. I tagged the audition and just read off of the audition sheet in a monotone and frigid stance. I thought they may just put me as an extra with no speaking lines. But the guidance counselor must have spoken to them because, to my surprise, they had given me the role of Ka, the snake. I was pretty shocked and discouraged by the news, because I really didn't want to have any speaking roles, especially with how terrible my English still was at this point. I can't express how kind and friendly everyone in the school was to me. Because when I raised doubts about the role, they figured out a solution. I would still play the part of Ka, but Ka was going to be a puppet of some sort which one of the art students would help create. All I was going to do was move the snake, while one of the other actors did the voice. These were extremely good news for me because I didn't have to talk one bit. Someone would do that part for me, and I just had to move a snake figurine around. The art class student had accepted the creation of Ka as her final project for the class, and it looked amazing. It was basically a massive piece of styrofoam that had been cut out and shaped and manipulated to look like a giant head of a snake. She had painted it beautifully and had added stones and gems to decorate the snake's head. Since it was only half of a snake, just the head, I was to stand on a chair behind a platform that was about shoulder height, with the snake lifted above my shoulders to appear to be slithering above the grass. The actor that was reading Ka's actual lines stood next to me and delivered the dialogue. It was a pretty easy setup, and a nice gig to keep my parents off my back. All I had to do was stand on a chair behind some fake grass and hold the snake's head up. We had already done tons of rehearsals, and you bet your ass I was there at every single rehearsal with the snake over my shoulders. Even during the initial table reading rehearsals, I sat down and proudly held Ka over my shoulders during his speaking lines to remind everyone who was actually the snake. During the rehearsals, I noticed that the guy who played Mowgli was kind of a dickhead. He asked me to do simple things like hand him a water bottle or to grab something from the drama room. But if I didn't understand, he would scoff and walk away. My English was getting a bit better, but I would often need clarification, and Mowgli would just piss and moan. And many times I'm pretty sure he was talking bad about me to other people. I could have sworn one time he was telling Bagheera that I shouldn't even be in the production at all, or that I was wasting everyone's time. I had later found out he was really serious about acting and wanted to go into the dramatic arts, so I guess his excessive behavior stemmed from the stress of wanting to be perfect for a high school play. He would always ask us to redo a scene, and very often he threw a fit at other actors for not delivering a line properly. One time he accused one of the monkeys of throwing him too hard during one of the scenes where the monkeys kidnap Mowgli. What's really important about Mowgli, though, is that he would often add his own last-minute spin to a scene. For example, the scene where him and King Louie are dancing, he thought that Mowgli should break dance. I never bothered to get an explanation for that one. So without warning, during one of the dress rehearsals, Mowgli started breakdancing. Everyone just kind of rolled their eyes and continued the scene because they didn't want to deal with more of Mowgli's bullshit. But motherfucking Mowgli decided that during the first showing of the production, he would add something new to my scene without alerting me. The scene called for him to just walk up to me and have the whole back and forth dialogue happen within the vicinity of Ka, me, since I am standing on a chair. I don't have the freedom to move around the stage the same way that he does. At one point, he's supposed to turn his back to me and cross his arms in hesitation. I don't know what my dialogue was, but I'm supposed to be convincing him of something which ultimately should lead him to turn back around and trust in me. Opening day. Mowgli decides that at the point of turning his back on me, he would walk to the other corner of the stage and sit down in an almost fetal-like position. I froze at this point because I wasn't sure if he was coming back or not. In my moment of perplexity, I stopped moving Ka's head around in the slithering motion. The guy that was doing my dialogue tapped my belly, motioning me to continue the slithering motion. Since I didn't understand him, I thought I was supposed to follow Mowgli over so that Ka and Mowgli could continue the conversation. Now, I don't know what prompts people to overlook certain crucial details, but I will just go ahead and blame sheer stupidity and a bit of nervousness for the following. I forgot that I was standing on a chair, so needless to say I fell down hard, and not only did I knock over the fake grass in my fall, I also killed poor Ka. I could hear the gasping from the audience as they heard the loud bang of me and the chair crashing shamelessly into the ground. I looked down next to me, and there laid Ka, split vertically into 3 pieces. I panicked, and I could see everyone in the back of the house watching me with concern, waiting to see what I would do. Mowgli, being an upcoming star, had not broken the 4th wall at all, and still sat there, waiting for the scene to continue. So I shuffled the chair over closer to where he was sitting, and picked up the biggest piece of Ka that I could find. So as Mowgli sat there waiting, out popped a thin slither of the once glorious and majestic snake known as Ka. At this point, the once concerned and attentive audience erupted into laughter at seeing what was left of the snake. It was an auditorium full of high school students, so the continuous laughter could be heard obnoxiously throughout the stage and back of the house. At first it looked like Mowgli was waiting for the laughs to subside. But next thing I knew, he walked off the platform almost in tears and came straight towards me. I had time to hop off the chair as I saw an angry man in an orange diaper savagely lunge at his prey. Now I have to admit, the brawl that ensued was really unnecessary. At first, Mowgli was just screaming in my face at the top of his lungs about how I fucked up the scene. He kept calling me a stupid Mexican, and although I couldn't understand him, his words and tone and the events that had just happened were enough to make me bawl my eyes out. As I stood there crying, one of the guys who played King Louie walked up and socked Mowgli right in the face. I heard afterwards that the guy had originally auditioned for the role of Mowgli and was pissed off when he got King Louie. So maybe he was just salty about it. But suddenly there was a whole jungle brawl, and a lot of people started addressing issues that they had with one another. It's not like everyone was punching one another like that scene in Mean Girls. It was really just a lot of angry dialogue. The whole thing led to half of the cast quitting on the spot, and we never even finished the rest of the show that I ruined. Surprisingly, nobody really blamed me for the Jungle Book incident, as it would later be called. They were mostly pissed off at how Mowgli reacted to what I had done. The girl that created Ka wasn't really that upset because she had already gotten her A, and I actually ended up dating her a few years later. The only positive thing, though, was that a lot of people seemed to feel sorry for me when they saw me crying, and they started making even more of an effort to make me feel included. Suddenly, I was being invited to parties and sporting events, left and right. Eventually, I came out of my shell, but to be honest, the whole incident did get to me for a few months afterwards. I started to feel really shitty about not knowing English, and about ruining something that people had worked so hard for. The whole thing was traumatizing because as a teenager, I was so self-conscious about everything, and being humiliated in front of the whole student body was definitely something that I never want to experience again. If anybody is wondering, Mowgli never became famous, although he did graduate with honors in dramatic arts from the local university. 2. This series of fuck-ups has occurred over a week and starts on Sunday when I was getting dressed. Fuck-up number 1. I choose to wear shorts where one pocket has a hole in it. Not much of a mistake, but it leads to others. Number 2. As I was walking to the library, I put my phone in the pocket which has the hole. The phone obviously fell on the ground. 3. To my surprise, it didn't crack, but as I reached down to pick it up, my water bottle fell from my backpack and smashed into the corner of the phone. This was pretty unavoidable, but I still should have realized the water bottle could fall. The phone was pretty unsavable. I looked at return policies, and since I don't have the protection, I figured I was screwed. Luckily, I had bought it off Amazon, and they accepted the return. So I got my refund, and paid the extra cost since the phone was no longer on sale. Number 4. I wrapped the phone and its accessories in tissues, and sent it off on Tuesday. Labor Day was Monday, so stores were closed. Can anyone tell how this was a fuck-up? Anyone? I only figured it out as I was lying in bed that night. If you guessed that I didn't take the SIM card out of the phone, you were correct. Now this is where most people would stop and take a long look at how much of a dumbass they were. Unfortunately, not me. I called Amazon and they said it would take 2 to 4 weeks to get it back, so I said fuck that, and went to the local AT&T store. I got my new SIM card and figured that my series of stupidity was over. How wrong I was. Number 5. I went to see how much longer till my new phone arrived. As I looked at the shipping address, I noticed something was off. It was shipping to my house back home, and not to my dorm room. For the 5th time, I had to contact my parents and tell them how much of an idiot I am. So now I have to wait until they send me the package, which will probably be a couple more days. Maybe a few more days without talking to people will help me. I swear, I'm not usually this idiotic. 3. I was in Vienna, Austria for 2 weeks. My only plan was to wander around and explore the city. I went to a few museums, galleries, bars, stuff like that. As I wandered the streets, I kept seeing signs for something called Einbahn. I figured it must be pretty popular, whatever it was, and I'd probably stumble across it at some point in my wandering. I was traveling without the internet in my pocket. Communal commando. One day the curiosity was too great, and I decided to just follow the signs until I found the place. Couldn't be too far away, so off I set. Hours passed. I grew weary. And still I was searching for the fucking Einbahn. Still I was seeing the signs, following the signs, but never finding the goddamn Einbahn. I'd follow the trail of a sign until I couldn't see signs anymore. I'd wander off dejected, then see another sign for the Einbahn. I wondered if maybe there was more than one of them. I hoped there was, if it would increase the likelihood of me finding one. I didn't dare imagine what I would find at this Einbahn, having been severely disappointed by Kunstmuseum just a few weeks prior. I don't recall if my feet gave out first or my sanity, but after 6 hours I surrendered to a bar and sat sadly with my Fosters. I am Australian, we don't have Fosters in Australia, and I wanted to try some. After 1 Fosters and 4 beers that weren't Fosters, I got chatting to some English-speaking locals. I told them of my troubles. I will never forget the way their eyes lit up when I said I'd been looking for the Einbahn. They listened with what seemed like awe as I described my journey through the labyrinth that is Vienna. One of them even clapped. Maybe they had been to the Einbahn and knew of its wonders. A sweet-looking girl put her hand on my shoulder. Do you know Ein? Ja, I said, which is how you say yes in German when you don't know any German. And you know Autobahn, the vroom vroom? Ja, a highway. I was acing the test. Yes, Bahn is road. Ein is one. I guess my eyes gave away that I wasn't putting anything together, as a young chap that looked very much like a dickhead yelled out at the top of his dickhead lungs, Einbahn! One-way street, Dummkopf! 4. This happened a long time ago, but this is the first time I'm telling anyone. When I was 15, I attended a funeral for a distant relative of my father, who we happened to be somewhat close to since he lived a couple of blocks away from us. A day before the funeral, I briefly met this girl, whom I thought must have been the hottest chick ever, and she seemed to genuinely show interest in me. In truth, she wasn't actually that hot. I was just a horny teenager. And she wasn't showing any interest. She was probably just being polite. Nonetheless, I could not stop thinking about her. Fast forward to the funeral, and I am sitting about 5 to 6 rows back, fantasizing about this girl when I nod off. I dream that the two of us are sitting on a bench at a bus station, at a busy intersection waiting for a bus, when she starts smiling at me and stripping off her clothes. I immediately drop my pants and climb onto her as she lays back onto the bench, spreading her legs wide open. I was so excited I could have had a heart attack right then. At this time, I had no recollection of sitting in a funeral moments earlier. I was thinking the gods have smiled upon me, and my craziest porn fantasies are coming true. That was precisely the moment that I came. I immediately realized that I was dreaming, and I could feel it all start to slip away as I woke up. I wanted to keep on dreaming though, so I kept trying to hang on. I thought that it's now or never. So I stuck my penis, which was happily pumping cum like there's no tomorrow, into the disappearing girl and thrust as hard as I could, while I clenched my eyes shut. A split second later, I find myself sitting fully awake with my eyes still clenched, and everything starts coming back to me as I start hearing the words from a eulogy. I slowly open my eyes and find myself sitting with my ass at the edge of the seat and my wet crotch in full view of everyone around me. The adults nearest to me, who I don't know, seem pissed, but their kids are giggling at me. And the seats right next to me, which my parents were occupying when I fell asleep, are empty. To this day, I do not know why my parents were not there. I suspect that they realized what was going on and decided that it would be less embarrassing if they were not associated with me. They did not return until after the funeral was over, and I did not utter a single word for the rest of the day. That was the most I have ever been humiliated. I just really hope that I didn't make any sex noises. 5. This actually happened yesterday. Up until yesterday, there had been a nasty ring of nastiness building around the bowl of my toilet. Yesterday, I finally got around to buying a toilet brush to remove the grime. As soon as I got back from the store, I was about ready to burst, so I rushed in and took a quick pee and did not flush. I washed my hands and went to the kitchen to put everything away, as well as put my dinner in the oven. After all the groceries were put up, the only bag left was the one with the toilet brush in it. I took out the 1/4 full bottle of bleach I had onto the kitchen sink, and went to the bathroom where I promptly emptied the whole thing into the pee water. I figured I would let it sit for a few minutes. I went to the kitchen to check on my dinner, and after a few minutes I went back to the bathroom to finally eradicate that nasty ring of nastiness. As soon as I moved the toilet brush to start scrubbing, the water began to bubble. That should have been my first clue. In any case, I ignored it and began to scrub. After a few minutes, I found that the fumes from my toilet were making my eyes sting very bad. In addition, they were absolutely noxious to my nostrils. I had dealt with fumes from cleaning products before, but nothing this strong. After about a minute of scrubbing and having to recoil my head away from the fumes, I couldn't take the fumes anymore and went out to the kitchen. While standing around in the kitchen, I vaguely remembered something about urine having ammonia in it, and how ammonia and bleach shouldn't be mixed. A quick Google search on my phone proved me right. Ammonia and bleach, if mixed together, produce a toxic chloramine vapor. The article I found online strongly urged me to call either a poison control hotline or go to the emergency room. I honestly didn't feel that my exposure warranted an emergency, so I went with the former. I explained what had happened, and at first the poison control hotline guy couldn't help but start laughing. After he calmed down, he assured me that accidentally producing toxic fumes in a toilet was actually quite a common situation he dealt with. Okay, sure, poison control hotline did. He stated that the ammonia in my urine was such a small amount that when it mixed with the bleach, the vapor formed would not have been able to cause any real damage. He advised me to get some fresh air and go to the ER if I started having trouble breathing. Once again, Not flushing my pee has resulted in some very heavy consequences for me. I think the universe is trying to tell me something. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Embarrassing Stories, Episode 10. Thanks, of course, go to all the good individuals who allowed me to use their stories this week. As always with the TIFU videos, I tend to be running quite close to the bone in trying to source stories. But the good news is I was able to secure more than I needed, so I've already got to jump on next week's video. I would also like to say thank you very much and welcome to all my new subscribers. And sincerest and most humble thank yous to my existing subscribers who have chosen to stick with me. Getting very close to that 20,000 mark now. As of recording this, I think it's less than 100 away. Let me just click on over. Yep, currently I'm at 19,907, so getting very close to 20,000. I don't have any current plans to celebrate the 20,000 with anything, but you never know. I am uploading. I'll have to make it first out. I'm making another 30 stories video that will be out. It'll be out the week after next. I'm hoping to have it up by the 19th. That's also my birthday as it happens, so I'll have it up by then. And yeah, let's call that the celebration for 20,000. Nice way to do it, I think. Okay, and with those words, I think I'm going to head off now because I've got quite a bit of editing to do. Such is the curse of a YouTuber. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.